I remember the moment my knees gave way. My eyes had been locked on the glowing screen of my husband's phone. The numbers in his account dancing before me like a cruel joke. I had not eaten in days. My stomach was empty, my throat dry, my body weak. But it wasn't hunger that made me collapse. It was the truth I saw staring back at me. Money. So much money. Enough to feed me, feed our children, feed a whole street for months. Yet here I was, clutching my belly, lightheaded, starving. My fingers trembled, my chest tightened. And before I could scream, everything went dark. When I woke up, I was on the cold floor. My body ached, my head spun, and I didn't know if I was in a dream or still alive. The memory of those numbers was still burning in my mind. My husband, the man I trusted, the man who swore we were broke, the man who watched me and the children sleep hungry, had been hiding wealth all along. But how? Why? And what did this mean for me? Before I could even try to answer those questions, I heard footsteps approaching the room. Heavy, steady, coming closer. My heart raced. Was it him? Did he know I had seen his account? And then, let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Margaret, but everyone in my neighborhood calls me Grandma Maggie. I have lived long enough to know that life is full of surprises, both sweet and bitter. But nothing prepared me for the season when emptiness became my only companion. It all started during one rainy night. The roof of our house was leaking, and the cold wind blew through the cracks in the wall. I had boiled water with a pinch of salt, and told the children to drink it as soup. They obeyed, their eyes wide and hungry. I sat by the corner, my heart breaking. A mother's greatest pain is to watch her children starve, and have nothing to give. That night, my husband Richard came home late. His face was stern, his eyes avoiding mine. "There's no money," he said before I even asked. He threw himself on the old sofa, stretched his legs, and closed his eyes as though the matter was settled. No money. I had heard those words too many times. They had become the cruel anthem of my life. But what hurt the most was not just the emptiness in my stomach. It was the emptiness in my husband's heart. Richard was not always this way. When I first met him, he was charming, generous, and hardworking. He used to surprise me with little gifts. A flower from the roadside, a piece of roasted corn, even a new dress when we could afford it. He laughed easily, loved deeply, and made me feel like the luckiest woman in the world. We built our home together, brick by brick, with love and sacrifice. But something changed. At first, it was subtle. He started keeping secrets. He would step outside to take phone calls, lower his voice when I entered the room, and keep his wallet hidden. Then he became harsh. He shouted when I asked about money. He ignored my tears when the children cried of hunger. And finally, he shut down completely, as if I was a stranger living in his house. Yet through it all, I endured. I prayed. I hoped. Because that is what wives do, isn't it? We hold on even when it hurts. But hunger is a cruel teacher. The days turned into weeks, and my body grew weaker. I would send the children to school without breakfast, whispering promises of a better tomorrow. I pawned my old jewelry, sold the spare chairs in the sitting room, even begged the neighbors for salt. Still, Richard never gave me a single coin. He insisted he had nothing. One day, I dared to ask him, "Richard, what if we die of hunger? Will you still say there's no money?" He looked me straight in the eye, his face cold, and said, "If you want food, pray for it." Then he turned and walked away. That was the moment I began to suspect something. A man who once worked hard, who always found a way to provide, had suddenly become careless. He didn't look like a man suffering poverty. He still ironed his shirts neatly, polished his shoes, and even gained weight while the rest of us shrank. Where was his food coming from? Where was his money hiding? My suspicion grew stronger when I saw him counting cash one night. He thought I was asleep, but I watched through half-closed eyes as he carefully placed the money into a black envelope and tucked it under his pillow. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but I swallowed my voice. My heart pounded, my stomach burned, and I told myself I will find the truth. And the chance came one hot afternoon. Richard had gone out, leaving his phone on the table. Normally, he guarded that phone like treasure, never letting it out of his sight. But that day, perhaps in his rush, he forgot. My hand shook as I picked it up. The screen lit, and to my surprise, there was no password. Maybe he trusted that I would never dare check. Or maybe he thought I was too weak, too broken, too obedient. I opened his banking app. What I saw made my mouth dry. My chest tightened. My breath caught. Zero? No. Not zero. Not a small amount either. The balance had so many digits I blinked to be sure. I rubbed my eyes, checked again and again, but the numbers didn't change. It was enough to change our lives forever. Enough to buy food, clothes, and comfort. Enough to send our children to school without worry. Enough to prove that Richard had been lying all along. That was when I fainted. And when I woke up, I heard those footsteps approaching. The footsteps grew louder. Each thud against the wooden floor sent a shiver up my spine. My body was still weak from fainting, but my mind raced with fear. What if it was Richard? What if he had noticed his phone missing and came back for it? What if he already knew I had seen his account? I lay still on the floor, hoping to gather strength before the door creaked open. My heart pounded so hard I thought the sound alone would betray me. The knob turned slowly. I held my breath. And then, it wasn't Richard. It was Mary, my little daughter, only 8 years old. Her big round eyes widened when she saw me sprawled on the floor. Mama. Mama, are you okay? She cried, rushing toward me. I forced a weak smile. Mary. I'm fine. Just a little dizzy. But she wasn't convinced. She knelt beside me, touching my face with her tiny hands. Mama, did you fall? Should I call Papa? No. The word escaped my lips louder than I intended. She froze, staring at me with fear and confusion. I softened my voice quickly. No, darling. Don't call Papa. Just help me sit up. She obeyed, pulling me gently by the arm. Together, we managed to get me onto the edge of the bed. My body was trembling, my chest still tight, but I clutched her close, burying my face in her hair. The phone was still on the floor, its screen glowing faintly. I reached out and grabbed it before she noticed. I quickly locked it and slipped it under my wrapper. Listen to me, Mary, I whispered. Don't tell Papa you found me like this, okay? Promise me. Her little lips quivered, but she nodded. I promise, Mama. I kissed her forehead, but inside me, my soul was raging. How could Richard do this to us? To his own children? To Mary, who sometimes went to bed crying herself to sleep because there was no food? To our son David, who often went to school barefoot because we couldn't afford new shoes? I remembered the last time David asked for money for his school books. Richard had barked at him. Do you think money falls from the sky? Do you want to kill me with your demands? David had lowered his head, swallowing his tears. I had sold my only good wrapper the next day to buy those books. Yet here in my hands, I had proof that money was not the problem. The problem was Richard. But why? Why was he hiding it? Why let us suffer when he had the power to change everything? That night, when Richard returned home, I studied him carefully. He acted normal, as if nothing was wrong. He asked about the children, complained about the heat, and even hummed a tune while removing his shoes. My anger boiled inside me, but I bit my tongue. If I confronted him now, he would know I had seen the account, and I wasn't ready for that fight. Not yet. Instead, I pretended. The days passed slowly, filled with hunger and silence. I kept my secret close, replaying the numbers in my head whenever my stomach growled. Sometimes I doubted myself. Was it real? Did I imagine it? But no, I remembered clearly. The money was there. My suspicion grew stronger one evening when Richard came home smelling of roasted chicken. His lips glistened with oil, and there was a bone sticking out of his pocket, as if he had been eating in the car. My children's eyes followed him like hungry puppies, but he didn't offer them a thing. Instead, he waved his hand dismissively and said, "Don't disturb me, I'm tired." That night, as the children slept with empty bellies, I lay awake. My mind raced with questions. Where was his money coming from? Why was he hiding it? And most importantly, what was he using it for? I decided I had to find out. The next morning after Richard left for work, I searched the house. I checked under the mattress, behind the old cupboard, inside the pots in the kitchen. Nothing. Then I remembered the black envelope I had seen under his pillow weeks ago. I lifted the pillow. Gone. He was careful. Too careful. But one thing he wasn't careful about was his phone. After that first time, I realized he sometimes forgot to lock it. Maybe he thought I wouldn't dare check again. But he underestimated me. Whenever I got the chance, I peeked. His account balance never changed much. It was always high, untouched. Sometimes I saw messages from unknown numbers, people addressing him as boss, or thanking him for favors. Once I even saw a message saying, "Delivery successful. The goods are safe." Goods. What goods? A chill ran through me. Was Richard hiding more than just money? One evening, an opportunity came that almost made my heart stop. Richard had left his phone charging in the living room and stepped outside to meet someone. I tiptoed to the phone, opened his messages, and found one that read, "Meet me at the warehouse tomorrow night. Bring the money." Warehouse. Money. My blood froze. I quickly copied the number onto a piece of paper and hid it in my wrapper. But just as I was about to return the phone, the door creaked open. Richard walked in. I jumped, my hand still on his phone. His eyes narrowed. "What are you doing with my phone, Maggie?" The air grew heavy. My mouth went dry. My legs felt like jelly. This was it. The moment I feared had come. Richard's eyes locked on me, sharp and cold. His voice came low and heavy. "Maggie, I asked you a question. What are you doing with my phone?" The phone burned in my hand like fire. I quickly placed it back on the table and forced a smile. I was just checking if it had finished charging. That's all. His face didn't soften. He walked closer, slow and deliberate, until he stood right in front of me. His height towered over mine, his shadow swallowing me whole. "You were checking my phone?" he repeated, dragging the words. I swallowed hard. "No, Richard. I wasn't checking your messages. I was only..." My voice cracked. "I was only looking." For a moment, silence filled the room. The only sound was the faint hum of the charging phone. Then Richard snatched it from the table and shoved it into his pocket. His eyes scanned me up and down as if he could read my thoughts. "Let me warn you, Maggie," he said finally, his voice cold as ice. "Stay away from my phone. Do you hear me? Stay away." I nodded quickly, lowering my eyes. Yes. But inside, anger boiled in me like hot water. How dare he? I was his wife, the mother of his children. What was he hiding so desperately that even a glance at his phone made him furious? That night, Richard barely spoke to me. He ate alone, leaving only scraps for the children, and went to bed early. I sat in the dim kitchen, my stomach empty, staring at the flickering lamp. Mary and David lay asleep on the floor, their tiny ribs showing through their thin shirts. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Only fire filled my heart. I whispered to myself, "One day, Richard. One day, the truth will come out." The next morning, life continued with its cruel routine. Richard left early, locking his bag as always. I swept the compound, fetched water, and prepared the children for school with nothing but boiled water in their stomachs. The neighbors began whispering behind my back. Some said Richard was broke. Others said he was wasting money on another woman. A few even hinted he was involved in shady business. I didn't know what to believe. All I knew was that my husband was not the man I once married. Days turned into weeks and still the hunger grew. I became thinner, weaker, my clothes hanging loose on me. Sometimes when I walked in the market, people pitied me with their eyes. But my pride wouldn't let me beg. One afternoon, while washing clothes by the stream, I overheard two women gossiping nearby. "Have you seen Richard lately?" one asked. "Yes," the other replied. "Always wearing fine clothes, eating well, looking fresh. Yet his wife and children look like skeletons." The first woman sighed. "I heard he keeps money in secret places. Some even say he has another house in town." My hands froze in the soapy water. Another house? Could it be true? I returned home that day with my mind spinning. Could Richard really have built another life behind my back? Was that where the money was going? That night, while he slept, I sat in the corner of the room watching him. His chest rose and fell in calm rhythm, his face peaceful in the moonlight. For a moment I remembered the man I once loved, the man who once promised me forever. But the memory only deepened my pain. Suddenly, I noticed his trousers hanging by the chair. Carefully, I tiptoed toward them and slipped my hand into the pocket. My fingers brushed against paper. Slowly I pulled it out. It was a small folded receipt. My heart pounded as I opened it. It read, "Payment received. Warehouse rent. 3 months advance." I froze. The warehouse again. My chest tightened. What was he hiding there? I tucked the receipt back quickly before he stirred in his sleep. But the seed had been planted. I knew now. I had to see that warehouse with my own eyes. The next evening, Richard said he would be going out for business. My heart raced. This was my chance. As soon as he left, I told Mary and David to stay inside and lock the door. Then I wrapped my old shawl around my head and followed him quietly from a distance. He didn't see me. I walked through the dusty streets, my bare feet silent, my heart pounding like a drum. He turned down a lonely road, the kind where tall grasses grew wild on both sides. At the end stood a large rusty gate. He looked around once, then slipped inside. I stopped, my body trembling. This was it. The warehouse. I crept closer, pressing my ear to the gate. Voices floated out. Men's voices. Laughter. The sound of boxes being dragged. My palms grew sweaty. Then through a crack in the gate I peeked. What I saw made my breath catch. Stacks of goods, boxes upon boxes, lined the inside of the warehouse. I couldn't see what was inside them, but the sight alone was enough to make my stomach turn. Richard wasn't just hiding money. He was hiding something bigger. Suddenly, a voice shouted from inside. "Who's there?" My heart jumped to my throat. The gate rattled. Footsteps rushed toward it. I froze in terror. The gate rattled again. "Who's there?" the voice boomed. I froze, my back pressed flat against the wall. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure they could hear it. The footsteps grew closer, heavy and quick, coming straight for the gate. In that instant, survival took over. I darted to the side, slipping into the tall grass. My wrapper caught on a thorn, but I yanked it free, crawling deeper into the shadows. My breath came in short, sharp bursts as I crouched low, praying they wouldn't find me. The gate creaked open. A tall man stepped out, his eyes scanning the road. He held a torch, its beam slicing through the darkness. My body stiffened. The light swept dangerously close to where I hid. I pressed my face into the dirt, holding my breath until my chest ached. "Must be a dog," the man muttered after a long pause. He spat on the ground, grumbled something under his breath, and went back inside. The gate slammed shut. I didn't move for several minutes. My whole body shook, not just from fear, but from the realization of how close I had come to being caught. When I finally staggered to my feet, I glanced once more at the rusty gate. Behind it lay the truth, and I was more certain than ever that my husband was hiding a dark secret. But what could I do? A poor, hungry woman against a man with power, money, and now strange companions? I wrapped my shawl tighter and hurried home through the lonely road. When I reached the house, Mary was sitting by the doorway, her little face anxious. "Mama, where did you go?" I was scared. I pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "I'm fine, darling. Don't worry." But as she hugged me, her small body thin and fragile, guilt pierced my heart. What if something had happened to me at that warehouse? What would become of Mary and David? That night I barely slept. I tossed and turned, haunted by the images of those stacked boxes. My husband wasn't just keeping money. He was involved in something dangerous. I could feel it. The next morning, Richard acted normal, as if nothing had happened. He even whistled as he buttoned his shirt. Watching him made bile rise in my throat. How could he laugh while his children starved? How could he keep secrets while my bones ached from hunger? But I kept quiet. I had learned my silence was my only shield. Days passed, but the hunger in our home grew worse. I became so weak that one afternoon, while carrying a bucket of water, I stumbled and fell. The bucket rolled away, water spilling into the dust. "Mama!" David cried, rushing to my side. "Mama, are you okay?" Tears blurred my eyes. I was failing them. That evening, while Richard sat outside talking on his phone, I overheard him say something that chilled me to the bone. "Yes, the next shipment is ready. We'll use the warehouse until the port clears. Don't worry, no one suspects a thing." Shipment. Port. Warehouse. My hands trembled as I pressed them to my chest. My suspicions were right. This was bigger than I had imagined. But how could I prove it? How could I protect my children if Richard found out I knew? I prayed hard that night, kneeling by the bed while the children slept. God, give me strength. Show me what to do. Do not let evil destroy my family. The answer didn't come right away. But the very next day, something happened that shook me to the core. A knock sounded at the door just as the sun was setting. Richard wasn't home yet. I wiped my hands on my wrapper and opened it. 2 policemen stood there. Their uniforms were dusty, their faces stern. "Are you Mrs. Margaret Richards?" one of them asked. My heart skipped. "Yes," I whispered. "We need to speak with your husband." "Where is he?" I swallowed hard, fear crawling up my spine. "He's not home yet." What is this about?" The taller officer exchanged a look with his partner, then turned back to me. "We just need to ask him a few questions about the warehouse he rented." The warehouse. My blood ran cold. Before I could reply, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching from behind me. Heavy, familiar footsteps. Richard. He had come home. The officers turned as he stepped into the yard. His eyes met mine for a split second, and in that moment I knew he realized I had betrayed him. Richard froze at the sight of the 2 policemen standing in our doorway. His face hardened, his jaw tightening as his eyes darted from them to me. For a moment, the air was so thick with silence that even the crickets outside seemed to stop chirping. The taller officer cleared his throat. "Mr. Richard, we need you to come with us. We have some questions regarding the warehouse you rented." Richard let out a short, cold laugh. "Warehouse? Officers, you must be mistaken. I don't own any warehouse." The shorter officer pulled out a folded paper. "We have records here showing your name on the lease. We just need a statement from you." My knees weakened. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear their voices. Richard's eyes flicked to me again, sharp as a knife, and I knew what that look meant. "You betrayed me." But I hadn't said a word. Could he read it on my face? Could he see the fear in my eyes? He straightened his shirt and forced a smile. "Gentlemen, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. But come inside, sit down, let's talk." The officers exchanged glances. One of them shook his head. "We'll wait for you at the station, Mr. Richard. Please be there tomorrow morning." With that, they turned and left, their boots crunching on the gravel as they disappeared down the road. Richard stood still, watching them until they were gone. Then he turned to me. His smile had vanished. His eyes were burning coals. "What did you do?" His voice was low, dangerous. I didn't do anything," I stammered, clutching my wrapper tightly around me. "I swear, Richard, I didn't." "Liar," he roared, slamming his fist against the doorframe so hard the wood cracked. Mary, who had been peeking from behind the curtain, screamed and ran to hide. David rushed to her side, holding her tight. My hands shook. "Richard, I swear I didn't call the police. Maybe someone else." But he didn't let me finish. He grabbed my arm, squeezing so hard I cried out in pain. His face was inches from mine, his breath hot and heavy. "If I find out you're the reason they came here, Maggie, I promise you'll regret it." He shoved me away and stormed into the house, pacing back and forth like a caged lion. My arm throbbed. Tears stung my eyes, but I held them back. I couldn't let him see me break. Not in front of the children. Later that night, when he thought I was asleep, I heard him on the phone. His voice was harsh, urgent. "They came to my house today. Yes, the police. Don't worry, I'll handle it. But we must move the goods immediately. Tomorrow night. Make sure the truck is ready." Goods. Truck. Tomorrow night. My stomach twisted. What was in those boxes? Drugs. Stolen things? Weapons. Whatever it was dangerous. And now, the police were already circling. The next morning, Richard left the house before sunrise. He didn't eat, didn't say goodbye, just slammed the door and vanished into the dawn. I sat in the quiet, my children still asleep, my mind racing. Should I go to the police myself? Should I confess what I knew? But if I did, Richard would find out. And if the police didn't protect me, I would be finished. As I sat there battling my thoughts, a knock came at the back door. My breath caught. Who could it be so early? I tiptoed and opened it slightly. To my shock, it wasn't the police. It was a young man I had never seen before, his cap pulled low over his eyes. He leaned in and whispered, "Madam, you don't know me, but I know your husband. He's in deep trouble, and if you don't act fast, you and your children will be dragged down with him." My heart skipped. "Who are you? What do you mean?" He looked around nervously. "Not here. Too many ears. Meet me at the old well tonight. If you want the truth about Richard, be there. If not, then pray God saves you." Before I could ask another question, he turned and disappeared into the morning mist. I stood frozen at the door, my heart pounding. Who was he? How did he know Richard? And what truth was he talking about? I shut the door slowly, my hands trembling. My life had already been torn apart by lies, hunger, and secrets. But now I knew something bigger was coming. That night, when the house was quiet and Richard had not yet returned, I wrapped my shawl around my shoulders and slipped out into the darkness. The path to the old well was lonely and eerie, the air thick with silence. My heart raced with every step. As I reached the clearing, I saw a figure standing there. The same young man. He lifted his head, and under the faint moonlight his eyes met mine. "I'm risking my life by meeting you here," he whispered. "But you deserve to know what kind of man you're married to." He leaned closer. "Your husband, Richard, is not who you think he is. He's running something dangerous. Something that could destroy all of you." Before I could ask what he meant, a branch cracked behind us. Heavy footsteps approached the well. The young man stiffened, his eyes wide with fear. "They followed me," he hissed. "Run." The night at the old well became the turning point of my life. I never forgot how the young man's eyes widened in fear, how the sound of footsteps rushed toward us, and how he shouted, "Run!" I ran that night with the wind carrying me, my heart thundering in my chest. But even as I escaped, the truth he left behind clung to me like fire. My husband was living a double life. The days that followed were filled with chaos. The police closed in. They raided the warehouse, uncovering boxes filled not with food or clothes, but with stolen goods smuggled through the port. My husband Richard was arrested. The neighbors watched in shock as the once respected man was dragged away in handcuffs. When I saw him taken, part of me broke. This was the man I had loved, the father of my children, the one who once promised me a life of joy. But love cannot survive on lies. Love cannot survive on betrayal. He had chosen his path, and it led him to prison. I was left with the ruins of his choices, but also with something greater, freedom. The children and I struggled at first. Hunger did not vanish overnight. But people who once turned their faces away began to open their hearts. The church brought food. Neighbors shared what they could. Slowly, I found strength again. I began selling small goods at the market, piece by piece, until the business grew. My body gained strength, and my children's laughter returned to our little home. One evening, Mary tugged at my wrapper and asked, "Mama, are we going to be okay?" I looked into her innocent eyes and smiled, tears blurring my vision. "Yes, my child. We will be more than okay, because now we have the truth." And that was when I realized the biggest lesson of my journey. Emptiness is not just when the stomach is hungry. Emptiness is when lies replace love, when greed replaces family, when a man chooses wealth over the ones who share his blood. I survived on emptiness, yes, but I refused to let it destroy me. To anyone listening to my story, hear me well. Secrets destroy families. Lies eat away at trust until nothing remains but pain. If you love your home, guard it with honesty. If you love your children, feed them with care, not just with bread, but with truth. Because in the end, money hidden in secret cannot save you. But truth can set you free. And so, though my husband's betrayal almost killed me, I stand today, stronger than ever, not because of what he left me, but because of what I learned. A home built on lies will fall, but a heart that holds on to truth will always rise again.